Sure thing.
All right, so I'm starting the recording. We just want to walk through the agenda. We have some conditional topics depending on who joins for today, but we thought we might jump in to a topic area that we've been exploring, I think, in the last couple profiling calls. Elliot, I'm glad that you were able to join today because it's around the application of that UCOM invariant in component, which was something, component value specifically, something I think you had suggested we kind of walk through following the development of some FHIR path that we did and applied it to one of our observation dot value elements. So we've got an update. Well, I should say we'll give the group an update on kind of what we discovered when we started trying to retrofit that against a different location and the changes, the differences in outcomes that were somewhat unexpected. We were hoping Paul was going to raise some of the strange behaviors with the FHIR path tester with Bryn at working group meeting. He may not be able to join today, but at least we can kind of recap where we sit and see if we can troubleshoot any other approaches to get the behavior that we desire. And then depending on where we can get to with that UCOM invariant, we might also return to some of the conversation that we've had around last week's governance call. We discussed a couple of options for how we deal with some sub-value sets that might be creating challenges in our community, and maybe even do some live kind of testing and troubleshooting with validation tools to see the impacts of one option over the other. Anything else that folks want to make sure gets added onto the agenda for today? All right. So I will just give a quick kind of briefing on kind of where we sit. So for a few weeks, we were working on this observation results invariant, and we needed to apply a fix to adjust not just the location and the strength, but ultimately like the actual syntax of how the FHIR path was being evaluated. And we finally came up with something that we really liked that effectively said, if your observation that is adherent to the generic results profile has a type of quantity, the expectation is that that quantity, or sorry, has a value of type quantity, and there is essentially something populated for value there, that a system will also exist, and that system will be units of measure. This is a warning. We got it working. We did an evaluation of this FHIR path on the application of observation value, and we're really happy with it, right? We tested against our happy path tests correctly, and it even successfully picked up what we wanted it to pick up on our in our intentional fail. So we were really happy with that, and so we spent the last profiling call going through how we might update this FHIR path to target component value, because in the same way, observations can have a single value, or they can actually have multiple values if those are expressed in the form of components. So you can have multiple components, and each component can have a value. And so we thought, well, it should be simple enough. We will apply component into the syntax, but keep the overall kind of logic the same, right? So you can see the value, when the component value is of type quantity and the value exists, then component of value type quantity system is expected to be there, and that system is expected to be units of measure. Where things got interesting was that when we ran this through, we found an example that we've been using for observation results that had a component value. Actually, it had more than one component value. And when we ran it through with what we thought should work, we actually have right now an incorrect flagging of false. Because we think it's the way that this is written, it's not prepared to handle the fact that there is actually multiple component values. And so we even with both of those component values having the expected units of measure as the system. And so one of the things that we said we should really try to determine is, is this a challenge with the way that the current FHIR path testing tooling is actually working? or is it an actual problem with the way that we've written this invariant as it applies to something that is an array? And so I'll just pull up kind of where we left off. And unfortunately, I don't think Paul has joined yet. So we may just have to look at.
Paul said he is coming, but
he's coming. Okay.
he said soon.
Soon. Okay. Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. So then I will recreate the problem for us to kind of baseline. So here's the example that we were working through. It's an observation example from the generic FHIR website, the examples against observation. And as we can see, there's no actual value because component this is I think not an A1C, glomerular filtration. So there's no value at the observation level, and instead values are conveyed in the component. So observation component, value, quantity. And what's interesting about this is that there's more than one component, right? So we've got the first value quantity that represents the filtration rate. And here is the actual details. Value is 60. Here are the units. Here's the system, right? So we'd expect this would evaluate to true based on the fact that value quantity is present, value exists, system is this, and ultimately at least one meets that criteria. But what we found is that, and so we would anticipate that this would evaluate to true on the basis of one component has that. When the example has more than one component with a value, for some reason it evaluates to false. And we tried a couple different things. Like we tried, messing with system last time. We tried changing it. I think we tried changing this to like value string and then just providing it a string value. But it's almost, there's something wrong with it. Almost seems to appear to be saying the only way that this evaluates to true if there is a single value, component value with quantity. But I think one thing we didn't test was, and I can just do it really quickly now. So here's it without modification, right? We can really quickly test. This is a single component value. Switches to true. Because a single instance of this exists. But again, when we have two, whoops, I might have put that back in the wrong place. 1 second. Okay. But when there's more than one, we get false. And so I think the question is, and I think we've got a few more folks on the call today than we had the last time we reviewed this, is there anything that anyone is seeing in the FHIR path that we're hoping to put into the profile that would explicitly be driving the kind of scenario where this is supposed to evaluate to true when only one of these is present? When only one, sorry, if only this occurs in one instance.
Sheridan, I'm going to make a suggestion. Unless somebody else is more confident. I am not strong in FHIR and not strong enough to debug it live in front of an audience. I wonder if this is a question that's worth posing on Zulip, where Brian Postlethwaite or Lloyd or some of the other FHIR experts might be able to jump in and provide clarity.
Yeah, and I think so. Our goal, and I apologize because I think I mentioned it earlier before you had joined, but so Paul was going to bring it to Bryn and Brian at a working group meeting. He's going to join, I think, in a little bit. So I think your suggestion spot on. We'll have to see if he heard anything, and if he doesn't join, or if there's still not resolution from what he heard, then I think, yeah, we basically have to be able to kind of raise this, because I think I'm in the exact same boat as you are, which is to say that, like, this seems reasonable enough to me, but the fire path, it's unclear whether it's the fire path itself or the way that the toolings behave. But at least at this point in time, what this means is that until we have a resolution, ultimately, we either have to, well, until we have a resolution, we have to wait in making the updates to the observation results that we're comfortable with and that are working at the value level, or push those through in an attempt to correct what we know is right now an error, and hold back on the invariant being applied to the value quantity until, with maybe a note to indicate this is a desired behavior and we're working on getting the fire path constraint in place in order to issue a warning.
Yeah, I was just looking through the fire path documentation on collections and things, and it would take me time to figure it out. I'm like Elliot, I'm not well versed in this.
The only question I would put is, are we confident that this fire path tester is actually working correctly?
That's the part I'm not sure of.
As if we think it's working correctly, then I wouldn't make the changes. If we think there's a chance it's not validating properly, then we can make the changes and test it on something else.
Well, we tried, so I put this in last time before we were closing out, just to see if, like, the client on desktop behaved differently. I couldn't even get this one to validate the way it was written, but it's like, it's a different issue, right? And I know that in the past I've had to, like, kind of manipulate this slightly based on, like, the context and where it's applied. But I tried parsing it right before the call, and the only thing I can say is that, like, it's picking up on something, but it's a distinct something from what we see occurring in the fire path lab.
So it might be a case of both. The validator's not entirely right, and we're not entirely right either.
Well,
It is-
just run this comment here. Actually, he's right, and my experience and this Jordan, you just presented this this app, and I would say might not be the better option compared with the website one else on the website that AP that product. Actually, to go to the upper right, level, you can find, yeah, there's quite a lot of option there.
Yeah.
Firepath JSON JavaScript, and if you scroll down here, actually there's a Firely, IBM, Happy Fire, all those things. Well, they're pretty much the same, similar, but not identical, and for same expression, some more, yeah, .NET more go stricter than the JavaScript. Well, that's definitely reflected the approved the run this statement there. And honestly, I mean, the iterative prison wall, issues right now, I cannot give you I believe the right expression right now, but let you know, there's just a few comments here.
Yeah,
I don't want
this
to
is
spend too much
interesting, 'cause
time here.
I don't think we actually looked at if
Yeah.
there's changes on any of these, but
It
it
just-
would be helpful to, like, now that if we quit, I'm just running through it and see if it changes, because that's then helpful to raise in our Zulip ticket too.
There's some issues there, I know there. And just to let you know, the first, just share my findings, very preliminary. I won't go really give you final, say this is works fine. Yeah. My observation first, and this, if we still want to go with where which is the dot value dot exist. And this expression string might be, I would say, from my perspective, might be put under the exactly the quantity dot value. In the location will be under the dot value there. Yeah, and that's my perception. Sorry, not perception. Sorry, my understanding there. And also, as you mentioned, that's I was learning about the FHIR path actually. It's a very interesting product there. And also here, I want to bring this something I learned, it's collection. I just mentioned there, if you all identify from the example here, ready? There's a multiple component dot value right there, and so it's a collection. So as long as one collection being proved as a true exists, and that whole that segment of expression will be true. That's always go collection. Think about collection, and 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as one is truth, this collection is truth. And also, I would like say maybe if we go the very old style programming, I would like to bring in. It doesn't mention that matter, but I would like to bring in that the similar concept here called the cursor. Where is the focus? Where is the cursor? And if you go there, think about it. Here in the expression here, where's the position there? The current cursor. If you go see that, just give a fake. I'm not 100% right now. Where observation dot component dot value dot whatever blah, 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 and got dot exists. Well, that's not a cursor. The cursor still added opposition there. That's why it implies maybe observation, and we can use that one. Maybe we can use a dollar this and in that matter, but it's not as was said. But I just want to bring that one into discussion because the concept collection and the concept cursor, actually, my understanding is very important to understand the FHIR path. Again, for me, it's still kind of iterative prison wall here. I still try to escape another layer of wall right now. Just stop here. Thank you.
So I think you bring up a really good point, which is to say that like when we originally drafted this, we were drafting it with the intent that it wasn't supposed to apply to a collection. Right? The original intent was so that it would apply to like observation value, which we knew really would only ever have one value populated against it. What I'm probably going to do, so I'm going to save the link that we have here. And you would mention that there might be a modification that it might be worth trying, Thomas. Like if there's anything that you want us to try, pop it in the chat. We've got it open. We can try other things, other ways of like constructing this. It doesn't have to necessarily be the exact same invariant that we have used in value if we think that the problem isn't necessarily the tool and more that it isn't written in such a way that it handles collections well.
Well, thank you, but my belief is that if I do not have 100% confidence about expression, I won't share it, and which could bring some confusion and distortion to the audience. And also, again, I forgot one thing. If you look at it above that FHIR path expression, there's called context expression, and
Yeah,
which is a
that's
bracket
fine.
optional. And that's why it's a very good example here, for my understanding, indicate we might have, as what I raised in the previous the call relevant to this FHIR path discussion, and also bring Randy, you have some other ideas actually. I think we talk about the same thing. What I'm talking about, we need to bring in a good template based full size of sample instance. And then from that point, we could do some, I call it the very layman words, modification for each segment we want to test and put inside in the right, that in that test resource, that panel, and do our test. Because without understanding the structure of this piece of instance, it's really hard challenge. Myself, for myself, it's mission impossible to give any conclusion about this expression is right or wrong. I do think, Elliot, your proposal good, put into the post in the Zulu.
Mhm.
But once we put ZOOP, we should provide a whole comprehensive picture, which is including the samples we would like to provide, as well as expression we want to expression we want to to test and give the whole idea from I call it the content both included and post it there and to let audience and to let other experts to do some slice dice work and to provide their comments there. Just stop here. Thank you.
Is there a, so I saw Ken put it in the chat and I'm going to jump to that shortly. But before I do, I was just copying over what we have. Is there a FHIR path? Is it just implementers that people usually will?
No, hold on. There is one. Let me see if I can find it.
Just one thing, when you ran that .NET version on that tester, it gave you that error of collections don't work right with an equals, right? Or that warning.
Yeah.
That's
Unexpected runtime errors. Yeah.
I think that's our clue to what's the issue is somehow we got to make sure we handle this collection.
Yeah, in that manner, actually, my current how to see option put inside exists as a parameter can maybe I think resolve the issue there.
Let's see. What was the one that you were mentioning that might resolve the issue?
Put as a parameter, sorry, in the exists function.
So modifying something here.
Of type quantity dot system exists bracket left bracket put equal this string inside it and the right bracket and remove I think remove the rest of the left. Yep.
Yeah, there isn't any harm of trying it.
Yep. And I think this should be the system. Should be system equal. System equal. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, okay. System equal.
Yeah. And yeah. And my thing also remove the system the head because the cursor is wrong. Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah. Hope so. That work. I hope cross finger. This would help.
Recently consumed exists exception.
You need a bracket. Yeah, quoted. The organization. Yeah, single, I think. Yeah, double is okay.
It's like this?
But normally I would single quotation just in case. We will put well, should be okay, but who knows?
Hey, that's a different behavior. So that's actually picking up true, which is cool. Let's see what happens if we modify the data. So right now it's picking up evaluating to true, which we would want it to. In any scenario where there is a value quantity in component. Let me just make sure. Yep, we still have two value quantities. Let's just see what happens. I don't anticipate this would change anything, but let's see what happens when we remove one of them.
Well, just you can do the test. I don't know how. I forgot how I did it. The location is crucial right now. Even this is true. If you put under the quantity above the value, it might be wrong, or it might be called the floating status.
So when you're saying quantity above the value, do you mean like if you change
quantity dot where you put this expression is crucial.
Ah,
Because the location of the expression means where this expression will be tested, right? And it won't actually, because this is a more, let's use a layman word, is independent of a FHIR resource profile as a separate product. In that manner, there might be no really enough relational relevance between this test with the profile itself. That manner, this test will not be is one way, and once the profile go to the specific locational cursor, which is the dot value, and that if that's a location, this expression being located or been written, understanding there, this file profile, file path expression will be is triggered, executed, and that's mean that the value does exist, but doesn't mean the value. Sorry, the value attribute of a value element might exist, and that will depend on the FHIR profile syntax checker to ensure that constraint.
But I still think what we could do, so like, I think what we could, we have an idea of where we would apply this in the actual profile. I think before we apply it and check it like end to end, we might just want to see if it still holds up when we modify other things, right? So like if it would evaluate to false if we only have value string, or if one of the systems isn't units of measure. And then I think what we could probably do is, as long as like some of these modifications don't result in outcomes that are undesirable, we test its application essentially on the profile itself. So the one I just did now was I removed, like basically I added something that would make units of measure, the units of measure part of it not flag by just adding this one. What I'm going to do, so and that correctly, because there's only one component in this example, flag to
Are
false.
you sure?
Well,
Last time I checked the previous example you shared, I found two components there.
yes, no, so when it's only one component, it flips to false, which is true, which is what we want it to do. So now I've just reintroduced the original two components, and I'm going to modify the first component value system. Oh, sorry, I did it on the wrong one. The first component value system to see if, like, if this is successful, this will still evaluate to true, because at least one will still have units of measure.org. That's successful. So what we've done so far is confirmed it works like the happy path, which is it works if there's two components with value quantity and they both are units of measure. It works if there are two components, value quantity, and only one is unit of measure. And it works if there is a component value quantity and one or sorry, and none of the value quantities are unit of measure. So regardless of whether or not there's one or multiple, it will flag to false if it can't find at least one system that is units of measure.org when a value quantity is provided, which, like, to me, that's ding, ding, ding. It's checking off, I think, a lot of the boxes on what we're hoping to be able to have this cover. And so, Thomas, you were saying this would work in the tool, but we need to see if it works when it's applied in the actual profile, because the location is incredibly important.
But weren't
Yes.
we to give an error if you didn't have units of measure.org as the value and you did have a quantity?
What was that?
Yeah.
So weren't we
Yeah.
trying to look for the saying it's false when you do have a quantity value that isn't set to that?
Yes. Yeah, so I'm going to reset it. So this is the default. So default should be true because it's units of measure. value quantity. So default true. If I would just to go example.org. So that's if one is example.org and the other one's units of measure. The expectation would be that it still flags to true because at least one is met. And
Well,
that's what
expectations
happens.
false because you got one that isn't met.
But, oh, actually, yeah, that's a good point. So let's talk about that. So is our expectation that every single time something is a value quantity in a component, it has to be units of measure in order for the,
That's my understanding of the rule, is what we're
yeah,
trying. I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding
interesting.
what the intent
Yeah.
was. That's what I thought it was.
And I think I've been thinking about this problem of like, oh, well, at least one has to flag, except that you're right. I think the spirit of the rule is if you're going to be supplying quantity, you probably should be using units of measure.
Right, and they should flag if any, at least one doesn't. If there's more than one doesn't, you just get more falses, but they have to all be the same thing, or else it's an error.
Well, just as Randy gave a good example, as here you can see that, while there's a different things and about the scenario, specific scenario test regarding this type of call it general test, that expression be anchored into the dot value. I guess I only can guess if we go through the official profile-based conformance constraint test, and that specific expression will designate it apply to that value under that value. And here we actually definitely under the value and the as treated as a collection. But here we put actually above as treated the whole example as a whole as a total, and above that here the location doesn't matter. It goes to the whole this profile and treat it as one collection. Start from the very beginning, which named observation profile, and give this result. So this result works in this scenario, and hope, and we need to use our imagination if there's some other tooling could be applicable, hoped in the future. But right now we have to use our human brains to connect the dots to ensure that's not only in this scenario it works, but also in that specific and the dot value scenario it should work. But normally I would say it should work.
So it gets us like 90% of the way, but in the scenario where for some and if we're looking for 100% airtight, because I think the reality would be, it would be likely if a system was using value quantity and provided units of measure, they would probably use that across the board for the system. But if we want it to be airtight, then we would need further modification. I think the question then becomes like, how important is it from the baseline perspective, we get it absolutely airtight?
You need 1,000 people to do the test.
Realistically, in my opinion, we need it so it works like it's airtight. I mean, that's the way you want these kind of things defined. Otherwise, there's kind of not much point of even defining it if it's not going to catch every case. I mean, I don't know what the likelihood of having somebody getting the wrong value and if they map something wrong or whatever.
So what I'm going to do, here's what, so
I
basically,
mean, if you're going to make it, sorry, if you're going to make it so it wasn't airtight, then I'd want it to fail if any one of them fails,
Yeah.
rather than pass if any one passes. And then I'd be okay with that. Like I'd be okay with saying fail when 9 out of 10 work and one doesn't.
correctly, okay, so it's Because it's a warning, to issue the warning more readily, and potentially have false positives than the reverse. Right? So let me just put this expression in. So it's if multiple components exist and at least one but does not flag as false when so there's got to be a way of making this more efficient, but when there are multiple component values and at least one is
Right now, it's basically working as an OR compare. If any one of the quantity systems is correct, then
So we want them all to be true for true as opposed to either or.
yeah. So the current one does it if any is true, then it comes out as true. That's not really the desired test.
okay. Interesting.
Can I say something?
Mhm.
I think it's very Sandra and Randy definitely bring a very good idea here. I just recall another concept, which is called SEAM. If I may pronounce it very correctly, and then from a coding perspective, coding test perspective, you can go to online SEAM, which as I remember, it's called separation. I think it's separation, encapsulation, abstraction, and modularity. So in that manner, it's go from expression go to the test sample here. In that manner, when you think about it, here we have two components, and if we go to the seam, that's my personal opinion, just for FYI, we might think to emphasize one component, remove the second component, that will be force this test. Only we realign our scope. And then we know that test should work well in that component, go to the end of the dot value and should work. And then in the matter, and also that's where this expression will be tested, will be validated in the actual, how to see the testing environment for those given FHIR sample instances. That's just my thought here.
So Thomas, are you saying to apply an additional invariant to
Not the
make
exact
it-
same invariants, but when we need to refocus, review what kind of example instance we utilized to have this expression to be applied. Because here you have presented two different example instance, right? One is there is one with one component,
Mhm.
another one with two components, right?
Yep.
But here, as Randy and Sandra mentioned, if we really want to make it work, my understanding, we might think focus just one component, make it works, because this expression, my understanding, will be accessed, will be executed once that the profiling based instance and conformance or validation process comes, the engine will go to the specific value quantity dot value at that location that that expression will be triggered to go to be sent into the logic pipe for execution for validation. And there, the scope of, if we go to the data structure data perspective, the scope in that value quantity only be scoped in that two bracket, the curves bracket, and a value sorry, comparator unit system code and stop. That's where the scope there, it will stay inside it, it will test inside it, and that will make the expression being tested properly and more close to our this scenario to test in that manner.
I think I understand the argument, Thomas, which is to say that like this expression, if the tooling that evaluates it behaves differently and actually evaluated it against the instance, and that was dealt with like knowing whether or not to evaluate against every single instance in the array was complexity that was handled by the tooling, it should work. But I think we also have to kind of recognize that like across all of these suites, if they all rely, like if they're all following the same, okay, we're going to evaluate down the line, and they aren't necessarily targeting it and built that way, I think it's going to be much harder to change the way that the underlying tooling infrastructure behaves than it will be to see if we can find a way to get the invariant to be evaluated the way the tools exist today.
The danger by going by the tool starts saying you got to start making FHIR paths depending on which tool is going to evaluate it. And we don't want to go there.
No.
Yeah.
And just as all of you said, and I'm sorry, that's actually something I'm struggling with. Just the expression here we put inside here for the test might not the expression we would like to put under the dot value. Because once we put, as what said, we want to limit or constrain the test scope for this expression only within that two curly bracket. In that manner, where observation dot component, because a separate product, it will be executed in the one engine. I hope that's maybe not that matter, but it normally doesn't matter. Will be sending from one engine to another FHIR path engine to do the analysis, which exactly sent out just like outside the scope of this bracket to brackets, and gave it to the whole spread out, spill over to whole the resource instance, which is a total different scenario as we expected. Well, so that's why I'm still struggling with it. So I at very beginning hesitate to give you any my thought, my final thought.
So is your hypothesis that if this was actually applied, let's just say if we applied this on the profile, potentially to component value, and then we load in this example into IG Publisher, that once you actually have its application at the profile level, that your outcome may actually be different because it would evaluate more broadly than what the tool is looking at right now?
Well, you can do a very interesting test, and you remove all those after implies, also including implies. Remove those, just
This one?
where every included implies. You can what execution, the result execution, and may think about it.
All right, let me just make sure I have a
copy
the
there.
way it is
Yeah.
right now.
Yep.
This is that. The value of type.
Well, that will be a good, if it works, and or maybe have the tricky work, and we'll see what I'm in the cursor here, and the collection as well.
Okay, yep, this is the same one. Okay, so you're saying to remove
Yep.
this, right?
All those.
Okay.
All those also, yeah. Remove it, execute it.
Okay, one
Look
second.
at it.
Let me just go to.
Yeah, congratulations. You got a whole resource, right?
Yeah.
This whole resource, yeah. That's what I mean in collection. Now the cursor is at the very beginning called this observation ID whatever, F205.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the output of this expression from FHIR. And the cursor is there at the very beginning, and where is called observation. And this is collection. The two concept has been verified by this expression.
But this is only, so this is successfully saying, I'm returning the thing that meets this preliminary rule, which is it's a component with a value of type, and the type is quantity with value populated.
Do we only have one component resource in this test, or is there more than one?
There's more than one in this one.
Oh, do we got more than one in the results, or just one?
Let me just see. Okay, I'm just going to confirm. Okay, so here's first component, second component. Code one. I'm looking for component here. Okay, first component. Second component. Value, quantity, value. Yep, so it's returning the same one.
It's returning both of them, or this first one twice?
Let's see, actually, because I think we modified this one. So this one, value quantity, I think this one still has example. Yep. So units of measures there. Here. There, it's returning it exactly as it is in what we've provided.
So it is returning the collection, so then what we need is that expression to loop through all the values in here, or all the components.
Well. Okay.
You basically look at each component from that observation.
Before you'd add in the remainder, you mean? Like before you'd add in the implies?
Yeah, we either need something to look at each, or we need something that triggers whenever even one of the components is missing the UCOM system.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Can I go back to like the inelegant solution? What if, and I'm just troubleshooting here, what if we had two rules? One which would just say triggers if, like, basically value quantity and at least one doesn't have it, and then another one where it's like the reversion, which is maybe, hold on, let me actually just think this through. Okay, so the first one is if value type is quantity, and then the expectation is that the units of measure is in the system. Is there like a could we use not in some way? Like could we get full coverage by saying, hold on, implies component value of type. Oh no, because it's already slimming down to the quantity.
Well, I mean, the expression
The
could
system
be
wasn't.
on the component. It doesn't have to be up at the observation level.
I think you could do it if you made the second, like there's one where system equals this, so that you should get true on the where it is units of measure, and then where system is not equal to units of measure. And if that comes back true, then you know you got at least one that isn't correct.
Okay, so how would we do that one if we were okay?
I'm not sure.
If this is the inelegant solution, just to see if having two invariants could catch this. It would be if value, a warning if value is of type quantity and system does not equal units of measure, right? Let me see. So we still like this, but implies observation. Or is there even a way of doing this, maybe where it's like removing this exist statement? Let me see, 1 second.
Logically, you can do that, as Randy mentioned. You can, but I still cannot find how to express it in the manner. Yeah, you can see that quantity dot exist. You know, system doesn't equal that string, and dot not exist. From the logic side, you could do this way because that will synchronize, singleton or synchronize, and any system doesn't equal to this specific text string URI, and which is cause this expression go to the false.
Okay, so
Go to true. Sorry, oh, false, true. Right? Exist. A system doesn't equal. I don't know which keywords can
Yeah.
replace equal. That doesn't equal, and dot not exist dot not. I think it's not. I cannot remember. You can go to check.
Let's see.
There is a not equals function.
Is that on the FHIR path? Not equal on.
It's a exclamation point equals sign.
But would it apply to everything in there?
Well, that would be part of the two case test. So the one where at least one is true, and then you want to go where there's none that are not correct.
So sorry, Randy, just when you were saying not equals, I'm trying to find it on the page.
I'm looking at build FHIR org, FHIR path, and then number sign equality. I'll post a link.
Oh, hold on.
I'm not sure if
Number
that's.
sign equals.
Oh, here we go. I can get the link.
Because I'll prop that into the chat. Basically, I think what we should do is we have two interesting scenarios to pose on Zulip. And I think we can say, here's what we've accomplished so far. We can put that out into the hemisphere, the atmosphere, and see what we hear about. And then maybe continue exploring this like not equals as a potential for resolution, depending on if we hear there is a could we use if we hear there is a clear resolution or not. Variant, the targets.
So if you tried with exist system, whatever, dot not, that might work to give us.
So like exists. Which one?
Everything after that system equals what units of org. But before the last bracket,
Yep.
put a dot not,
Let's see.
and then two brackets. You got to open close bracket too. Oh, you need an open bracket too, because not's got to have an open
Yeah,
close.
right after the not.
Left, right there.
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Theory that might give us a true when there's one that's not correct.
And right now that should be the case here.
Or
Here's what I'm gonna do. I think, you know, this types of exercise is helpful in itself because it helps us play around, understand, essentially experiment with the standard. I'm gonna leave this as it is. Return to test the syntax fix. And we'll post, unless there's someone who wants to raise their hand and make the post for me. Something to the FHIR path Zulip that calls out both of these, and then we'll return to this one and potentially any answers that we have from Zulip on our next profiling call. I do have a hard stop, so the details are there if you are interested in trialing this out in the meantime. But I'm glad that we didn't just like set it down and say, well, you know, like we weren't even trying, because we've obviously made a lot of progress today, even if it's just in exploring alternative ways to target, you know, very similar rules. So I'll leave it at that. I am continuously impressed with our community, and I look forward to continuing to troubleshoot this on our next profiling call.
Thanks, Shirley.